inspire people to look at reality as being much broader and, okay, let's learn to place a foot in the non-physical and keep a foot grounded in physicality.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 111 of Toward a Better Life. You just heard some words from this week's guest, Stephen Daniel, and we're exploring other worldly realms in this edition, and we're going to set the mood a bit with Willowolf with Through the Veil.
There's an ocean in my dreams, the stillness singing blue, horizons out of view. I reached down and broke the glass, I fell through, the fear soon passed. The start of a journey on my way back to the veil. I question why, asking who am I, what's my story, what's my gift to the world. I search for reasons, walking through the seasons on a journey to the veil. I have a memory deep within, a burden through time that put me out of line. But I got up, climbed the wall, filled my heart, now I stand tall. I pulled back the curtain, looked back through the veil. I question why, asking who am I, what's my story, what's my gift to the world. I search for reasons, walking through the seasons on a journey to the veil. There's a child in the trees who sits by a well and prays on their knees, casting adrift a seed on the breeze, with the hope of tomorrow as it passes through the veil. I question why, asking who am I, what's my story, what's my gift to the world. I search for reasons, walking through the seasons on my journey to the veil. Do you question why, asking who am I, what's your story, what's your gift to the world? Have you searched for reasons, walking through the seasons on your journey to the veil?
This is Kevin Pennell, and that was Willowolf with Through the Veil from their album Children of the Sun, used by their permission. We'll be hearing more from them in the future. You can find Willowolf and more of their music on Bandcamp. There's a link in the show notes for that. Toward a Better Life podcast features like-minded people sharing their stories, ideas, and activities on what we can do to generate a better life individually and collectively. You can share your prose, your music or poetry or storytelling on the show. I'd love to hear from you. Just send them to me at kevin@towardabetterlife.com. And please subscribe to the show, by the way. Keep following for magical insights into earth-based spirituality, self-development, and self-care. Also, remember to support the show by leaving your review on Apple Podcast. In this episode, I'd like to welcome Stephen Daniel, an artist and writer, recognized for his ability to articulate the intersections between physical and non-physical worlds. It's gonna be something. Pay attention. Residing in LA, Stephen shares his insights into the questions of where we come from and go from here as the first step to discovering our wholeness and ourselves at deeper levels. We're talking about brighter realms in this episode of Toward a Better Life. Good afternoon, Stephen Daniel. Good to see you.
Nice to meet you, Kevin.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? I'm looking at a copy of a book that you've got working on called Brighter Realms, Awakening Awareness of Your Higher Self. And that is going to just in and of itself, it's got my attention. But tell us a little bit about what you do and what led you into this pathway.
Yeah, I was in the diamond industry for a number of years. I wrote screenplays for about 15 years. And I always had this understanding that my writing was a reflection of who I am as a person. I think that's natural for most writers. And there was an idea that I had written several screenplays on. And, screenplay writing is taking a broader idea and compressing it. It's very challenging. And writing a book for me was a very freeing experience because it gave me the format to really express the ideas that I have inside me. And the ideas really began from my earliest memories. I started having out-of-body experiences. And the experiences were so commonplace through my early years and my teens that I viewed them as not having any real merit in my life. They were just a part of who I was. And I kept it a secret. I didn't talk about it. I shared it with my first girlfriend. But when I opened up to my parents when I was younger, they would give me a puzzled expression or, stare at me uncertain. I felt that they were uncomfortable. And I really sort of kept this information inside me. And I didn't understand it for most of my life until I reached my 20s and I began to explore yoga and other traditions. And I became fascinated with belief systems, and I was raised in the Jewish system, and I was friends with people who were very, very steeped in their belief systems, some Hasidic and Orthodox people who influenced me. And around the time I was 22, I met with this Kabbalah scholar, and we began to explore the Kabbalah. And essentially what I found through these investigations is that there are many different belief systems on the planet, and all of them come from an origin. And that's what I was trying to understand. What is the origin of belief systems? And the book isn't really specifically about any religious systems, but it's a broader understanding, a broader relationship to how beliefs influence us, and influence our lives and our role with these systems. And around 30, I became so intrigued with the idea of my comparative study and trying to understand the origin of belief systems. And I met an individual who provided a training program for me that was without any particular beliefs, sectarian. It was a way to focus my attention and make contact with other dimensions of reality, what I talk about as the non-physical. And in the non-physical, I was able to connect with specific relationships that I call my energetic family or my higher self. And the higher self was an understanding that perplexed me because I had been hearing a voice in the back of my mind since childhood. And voices are much more common with children. But let me just preface that this is a beneficial voice, a supportive voice, a voice that is providing guidance or steering me, trying to steer me clear of dangers and support me with the ideas that finding purpose and discovering, what it is that is going to give me the greatest fulfillment in this life. And I went down this path to understanding my relationship to reality, who I am, where I come from, where I go from here. And it led me to eventually write this book. And, one of the ideas that I explored long ago is the idea that reality is imagination at the frontier of thought. Yet what gives us, So that was a quote that I wrote years ago. And came out of my screenplay writing as I was trying to figure out, who am I and what is this that we're creating here? And that quote just resonated for me. And, and then I was discovering that it's like what gives us the power to acquire insight, intuition, and creativity is much more than imagination. And the idea that people are fundamentally an energetic essence with a core identity, what I think of as a higher self, representing the origin of intuition, creativity, empathy, compassion, and love. These are the features of our humanity. So, the life journey that we've undertaken here can be fraught with obstacles, and we can struggle to feel safe in a world of uncertainty. We can feel disconnected from life and unmoored from ourselves. Fear and anger can certainly play a role in our experience, interfering with intuition, creativity, diminishing our capacity for empathy, compassion, and love. And our essence is what we seek most for courage and strength. And light and peace are really our birthright. And tuning in offers us potential to access benevolent resources from our non-physical origin, the idea of being connected. And I think that my experiences, the early experiences especially, led me away from being aware of my essence and that part of me which is fundamentally timeless, immortal. And yet the experiences that I was having, the out-of-body experiences, were showing me another side of reality. And yet I was conforming to the civilization, the world that I had entered. And I was losing touch with that part of myself. I had picked up a drug habit as a teenager, eventually quit that. I write about that in the book. In fact, the newer version of the book has much more depth because I had an experience where I almost died, or I did die. But the book isn't based on a near-death concept. So I'd like to talk a little bit about my mother, for example, and her experiences. At 31 years old, she experienced a trauma when her father died of a sudden illness. Mm-hmm. And she was terrified that he was gone forever. And she attempted to take control of her experience by becoming angry. She withdrew from her family and fell into discord with the world. My father, brother, and sisters watched her slowly disappear from our lives. And the further away she became, the less recognizable she appeared. Her capacity to experience empathy, compassion, and love was greatly diminished. Mm-hmm. And this went on for 6 months. She woke up with tears and went to bed heartbroken. And she eventually reached an impasse. One morning, she was awakened by her father's voice. She lifted her head from her pillow and saw him at the foot of her bed. And he asked her to let him go. And when that happened, a powerful feeling of calm came over her. She realized her father was not far away. And essentially, my mother had discovered existing connections to non-physical worlds. She had discovered her potential to restore wholeness from the fragmentary effects of emotional pain. The experience gave her a renewed vision of empathy, compassion, and love.
Okay.
And I've heard, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just taking all this in, man. it's a wonderful, wonderful sharing that you're doing. And there's some things that come to mind. Like, let me see if I get the quote right. Your quote is it imagination is at the frontier of thought. Is that what it was?
Reality is imagination at the frontier of thought.
But that's a phenomenal statement, and it's so true. I mean, in Druid studies, for an example, one of the things that we talk about, and I really appreciated so many different points in your book that I read through, and your approach is very, I'm going to say, is very tangible to people because sometimes we read things like this, and it just seems out of reach. And one of the things that I recall from my own studies, not just in druidry, but in my own work, in shamanic work and out of body things and journey work and things of that nature, you've already said it in your quote, and it's so very true that you need to begin with an imagination. Even when I've done hypnotherapy with people, I share with them, start with your imagination. Well, what can I expect? I said, don't expect anything and just kind of go with the flow of things, and you're going to find out some miraculous stuff. But you need to start with an imagination. And I'm going to try and help paint that for you. That's what I would do as I'm doing hypnotherapy. But
Yeah,
imagination is such a powerful, powerful tool if we just learn to work with it more. And there's all different ways of doing it. I mean, sometimes you can work with psychedelics and things of that nature. I have personally never had the need to do that. It's just not my thing. I'm not trying to make a statement, "Oh, look at me, I don't have to do that." It's just I don't feel the need to do that, and it's working fine for me. But what I found so interesting too about your book is that, you know, I have already said we have what's called a shamanic state of consciousness in shamanism. You have journey work that's done in all kinds of different cultures and all sorts of different platforms. As you've mentioned, out of body experience. I think the first time I recall reading about that was, of all things, Shirley MacLaine back in the early 1980s. I
sure,
remember, reading her comments about out of body experiences, and I said,
sure.
oh, then I'm not really losing my mind. These things that I'm doing, it really does happen. Because I was doing
Yeah,
this stuff and it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like I said, the way that you're sharing this information is doable. And that's what I want to be able to share and have you share with people about this stuff is real. And as
yeah,
long as you
yeah,
can work through it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's as you talk about imagination, it's very much has a central role in the book because, as I say, imagination is a fundamental relationship to energetic and an energetic essence that we are. It's not a part of us. It's essentially our wholeness. It represents a fundamental part of our wholeness with a core identity, what I think of as a higher self, representing the energetic origin of creativity, empathy, and compassion and love. So intuition, insight, intuition are inherent within us
Hmm.
because we are informed by the worlds that we come from before life and return to someday.
Right.
And we are informed by these worlds because that's who we are. That's where we come from. And I tend to see the physical body as a suit that we wear that gives us access to this environment. We wouldn't be able to be here without it. It's like the ultimate spacesuit,
Hmm.
and it gives us the ability to navigate this environment. And then at some point, we eventually leave the suit behind and we return to where we came from. And that, what I'm trying to do in the book now, especially the new version of the book, is draw a parallel between our essence and our core identity, and that we each of us have a piece of this pie, piece of this puzzle. The relationships that we have in common, we tend to see each other as being so different in this world. And we have that unique identity. And yet, what we are essentially as energy beings, we have a great deal more similarities than we do differences. And our differences really are the ego, the personality, the appearance, but fundamentally we are energy
Mm-hmm.
at our core. We are essence.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what unifies us. And that is what we seek for unification in this world when we're feeling separate and apart from the world. You know, as I say, we can feel uncertain in this world. We can feel disconnected from life and unmoored from our essence. And there are reasons for this because it can be a stressful environment. We can be easily distracted by events and circumstances in our life and forget ourselves.
Yep.
But when we get back to that fundamental core experience that we all have in common, that is connection to our wholeness and to our larger identity. You know, I can just keep going on this subject, but essentially that is our birthright. That is who we are.
Well, it's learning to make that connection, isn't it, Stephen?
It's a challenge.
It is, because I one of the chapters I'm gonna pull right out here really quick, if you don't mind.
Of course.
You may have changed the title in the revised version, but it's The Doctor, the Intelligence Within.
Yes.
And you talked about, I think it was in the context, I think it was a case where you were out sailing with your father or something like this, and you had the opportunity to chat a little bit with him, who is a doctor.
Yes.
And how he had talked about how he couldn't really understand it, but he would feel stuff from patients, even though it wasn't necessarily there
You know,
in a tangible way.
any good doctor, in my view, gets so good at their craft that they can open the door to their waiting room,
Yes.
look in their patient's eyes, and they're going to have a pretty good idea what's going on. That's intuition.
Yep.
They're operating with a heightened intuition and an awareness for their environment and the people who come and go. And he was a traditional doctor. He was an OBGYN. He became world renowned for his ability to help people heal. Mm-hmm. And he did this by being informed from his non-physical counterparts. So he had an enormous capacity to provide direct experiential insight and intuition to help his patients recover and help them become better. And he did this effortlessly. And so, you know, you see this with sought after professionals in our world for many fields. People who spend their lives immersed in a particular subject become good at it. And they not only become great at it, they are doing it from a very insightful and intuitive space. You know, as I talk to you, and I can see that you have a background in broadcast journalism, and you have immersed yourself in a relationship to bring that sensitivity to the forefront of everything you do. And I can feel that by how this conversation is going, that you and I are linked in a unique way.
Right.
We understand each other because we're both operating with a fundamental connection that gives us that knowing, that relationship. And that's what I think we're all seeking in our lives, in our personal relationships, in our professional relationships, etc.
It's making the connections with each other. I mean, there was part of that background, part of that iteration of me in the past, but currently it's more of, I like to call myself a healing facilitator, because I've been doing body work and massage and energy work and things and spiritual work with people for over 25 years now. And that's my real joy. But I find it interesting when I'm working with somebody that I often will say many times during the course of the week that I'm making a connection with you. That's how I can tell that you have a pain right here, even though you haven't told me about it. Yes, I can feel the muscle tissues that are maybe there, but Stephen, before I feel the muscle tissues, I sense it. And you get that. I know you do.
Yeah.
And I try to instill this into massage therapists and other body workers and other caregivers, that it's so important to make that connection with that person, that they're not just a number, but they're a human being, their energy, just like you said. And when we're able to make that connection with those people, that's when things happen. And you can call them miracles if you want to.
That's when the
And you,
magic happens.
I was just going to say, you took the word. I said, that's the magic. That's the real magic. And people shy away from the term magic because of some of the connotations it's developed over the centuries. But magic in and of itself is miraculous.
Yes, yes, yes. It's what we're all here for, right?
Yeah.
So, it's a fascinating subject because essentially, as I see the adventure of healing, it really begins with ourself and
Mm.
those relationships that we are being informed by and through in the non-physical, our higher self, our energetic system, are supporting our effort. And then as a healer for you, your ultimate goal is to help your patient become their own healer.
Right.
So that you're conveying this knowing, this sense of, and so, I really like that idea that the best teachers are really getting out of the way and
Right.
allowing the student to become a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And the best healers are getting out of the way and allowing the person who needs healing to become their own healer,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to advocate for themselves so that there's not that relationship of dependency, but rather independence. And uh, and I think that's an important idea through which we all kind of move up the ladder together in our evolution. That so that, and that's what I'm getting from your experience, that you have this sensitivity. Of course, your patients or the people that you're helping may never be able to read energy the way that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And it may not even be beneficial to be able to try to teach them what you know. Either you have it or you don't have it. But it's important to highlight the idea that I think we're on a path together, and that on some level, people respond well when they understand that they are taking responsibility for their own healing.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm also picking up from the book, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but I almost have the sense about it that you're trying to convey to people that this sort of way of life, if I can use that terminology, is available to anybody. And I've often used the term that it's an activity, it's an exercise, if you will. And if we don't, for an example, if I don't use a particular muscle as often as I should because of injury or what have you, the muscle will go into atrophy. Doesn't mean that it's completely gone, but I have to go through a therapeutic activity to bring it back to its full potential. And I sense that we, as children, all have the imaginations. We have that sensitivity. And as we grow up, the sensitivity wanes a little bit because of other stuff that comes into our life, be it cultural, be it lifestyle, be it profession. And then what happens is later in life, we realize, oh, wait a minute, there really is something to this. This imagination stuff is real. And I just forgot how to use it. Maybe I need to exercise it again. And it almost is like your book is promoting the idea to wake that part of yourself up and just see the magic come out of your life. That's the short of it.
Absolutely, very very much so. And I'm trying to convey that sense of self-empowerment,
Mm-hmm.
and that we all have the potential to create an alignment with who we are at our fundamental self, our essence, and from there, connection manifests.
Mm-hmm.
That we can manifest connection through the awareness of our essence. So in the new version of the book, I create exercises. I think there are 5 exercises. I may add one more. And the exercises are simple. Keeping a dream journal, or going back into our memories and this isn't about dwelling in the past, but it's about understanding where we come from to have a clearer picture of where we're going. And as we explore our early memories, we're really exploring feelings around those times: happy, sad, uncomfortable, angry, fearful, and of course, the joyful emotions as well. And by exploring these facets of our life, we're uncovering the hidden layers of our inner self. And that is where the essence resides. And once we begin to make these discoveries through this pragmatic exploration, and this is something we can do a little bit of every day, we open ourselves to broader connection of who we are, where we come from, where we go from here. And I think that's really what we're all seeking, is to understand that relationship to our broader evolution, to the experience of being human, which is so much more than the physical interaction in the material world. I think that's an important part of it. It has enormous intrinsic value. But to place a foot into both worlds, and that's what I'm trying to do in the book,
right,
is inspire people to look at reality as being much broader. And okay, let's learn to place a foot in the non-physical and keep a foot grounded in physicality. And I want to preface that being grounded is very important.
yes. It's very important. You have a chapter devoted to the thing of the non-physical making contact. And can you expand on that a little bit for us? Just
Sure.
I have a pretty good idea, but you tell us your perspective, because I already read it.
So you and I are having a conversation, and we've made a contact. So through that particular chapter, I learned a methodology for making direct contacts with my energy system in non-physical worlds.
Right.
And in those contacts, I was able to begin opening a dialogue, a communication. But the challenge of explaining this is that you and I are speaking in the English language, but we're also working intuitively through insight and awareness that is beyond ourselves. We are being informed by the non-physical as we're talking to each other.
Right.
And in this setting, about 30 years ago, I was able to learn these techniques for having direct experiential contact with my energy system, what I think of as a highly organized and intelligent system that has other associations, what I call beings, and then my higher self. And these relationships absolutely have my best interest in mind, and they support the work that I'm doing here. When I think of guides, I think of them. They've always been there.
Yep.
They always will be there. And these are the relationships that are my go-to. But it's interesting because, the human language has so many complexities, and yet it's also very limiting in terms of expression. And when we're talking about imagination and the way that we acquire information, I think of imagination as intuition and insight, creativity. And of course, we all think of imagination as creativity, perhaps, but through these connections, we are acquiring information, and that is the ultimate source for our imagination. I do say that, insight, intuition, and creativity is much more than simple imagination, because people are fundamentally an energetic essence with a core identity. What I think of as a higher self, representing the origin of intuition, creativity, empathy, compassion, and love. And these are the fundamental features of our humanity. They are present within most of us. And I don't want to talk about evil today, but we've witnessed that it's not present in all people, but I would say in most people, and certainly the people that we're talking to right now have this awareness, and everybody can understand empathy, compassion, and love, I would like to think. And this is what I'm now developing the book around, much more contextually in terms of the messaging. How I'm going to deliver that is very much in line with what we're talking about today.
So you've got some new things that you put in the book that's coming, that's out, and it goes in a little bit more in depth on how to put this activity into practice.
Yeah, so the higher self, we each have a higher self, and that relationship is so fantastically unique to every human being that I can't really touch that. The higher self relationship with its human counterpart is as unique as a fingerprint, but I can touch the essence, and I can offer exercises, and I do call them exercises for lack of a better word, techniques for tuning into our essence, tuning into the timeless, immortal aspect of ourselves, our what I call our essence. I also think of my higher self as my core essence, and me, an extension of my core essence, is simply an essence. And I do talk about that in the book, of course. But this is what the way that I'm trying to distinguish this meeting is to really preface that the essence, we kind of need to figure out how to get distractions out of the way, to get out of the way all of the worldly concerns that consume us so completely, and get back to that core self. For many of us, we simply take a walk, we read a book, we play with a child, we play with an animal, we stand in a sunset, or we take a more determined approach by meditating. But life is a meditation. Every day is a meditation. We can live in a state of meditation, and we do, driving a car. There are many ways that we meditate. And again, all of these aspects of the distraction we learn to deal with. We take a nap and we unhook from the external world, and we return to our lives refreshed and renewed with a sense of greater access to our imagination, our intuition.
That's where I go with the idea of part of that walk would include going out in nature.
Absolutely, but
leave the cell phone behind. You can take a drum with you if you want to, or take a rattle. You could whistle, but you want to. I tell people whenever they try to do this for the first time, leave the cell phone behind. Go for a walk in the woods. Go find a spot that you feel, and it may be just weird that you would feel it, but you can feel it if you just open yourself up. And when you are at that spot, just sit there. Just sit. And that is the hardest thing in the world to do these days, isn't it? to do nothing, but just sit there. And when that happens, now you're connecting and you're able to disconnect, but you're connecting with the higher self. You're connecting with other worlds. You're connecting with, I'm going to say, the stuff that matters. But I know that in Druidry, in Druid, we would talk about a light body exercise, where you would go into a space, and basically it's a deep meditative space, and you create this realm, if you will, and it's that other space, and you go through relaxation techniques. And I'm guessing that if in the exercises that you give for people that really want to experience this, particularly if they have no background at all, I'm guessing that it's kind of a step-by-step process to maybe take little baby steps, and then as you feel more comfortable, moving into other realms.
Well, here's a very simple exercise that I like to talk about as we explore feelings and we have questions. And I tend to say to people, if you have a question about a personal relationship, that can be more challenging to understand than a question about how you feel about that personal relationship. And then you take that feeling as a thought and you forget it. You send it out into the universe. And so, but it is a question. Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel so happy? Why do I feel so sad? Okay, well, there are circumstances in my life that seem to be generating this feeling of sadness, and maybe that's very tangible. But getting to the core of that feeling is the point of the exercise, to understand the feeling and to be able to integrate its meaning beyond our ability to do so intellectually or with other emotions, because then we just confuse the point. If we're trying to simply understand ourselves intellectually.
Mm-hmm.
And so I take that idea, take that feeling, and the exercise is to send it away from you, send it into the universe and forget about it, do something else. And you may find hours or days later that a unique perspective arrives back in your life. It gives you a greater understanding about the experience that you were having. And this is our essence at work. When we take that question and we send it out, we're essentially letting it go. We're letting it go into the universe. For lack of a better word, the universe is still a belief, but we're sending it out and we're allowing our essence to do what it does best, connect to our larger identity. And then we acquire understanding from and are informed by our larger identity, our core self, our higher self, energetic family. We're informed by the non-physical. And this is the relationship that I'm trying to convey through the book, that we each have in common. It's our most powerful tool, our greatest our greatest ability to understand ourselves,
right,
and to be connected and to find purpose and fulfillment.
So there was a part of what I read. You talked about an experience, and I think it may have been when you were maybe younger, and it was a lady in a dress. Oh yeah, the woman in the antique dress, the
Yes.
island party.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this from the standpoint of I've experienced something like this. Only it wasn't a lady dressed in red. It was a guy dressed in Native American regalia.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and he was just as real as you are to me right now. Really. I mean,
Sure.
I could reach out and touch him. So but this is about you. Tell us a little bit about that story. And the only reason I want you to do it, everyone, is that this is tangible again. This is possible. And if you really open yourself up to things, and I'm just going to be quiet. So tell us the story.
Well, I talked a little bit about my mother suffering a trauma when her father passed away for 6 months. And she saw him standing at the foot of her bed one morning. And he told her that he was happy where he was. And he asked her to let him go. And this brought an enormous relief for her. She was discovering existing connections to other worlds. And from one day to the next, she resolved her trauma. She literally came back to her family and her life became balanced again. And she had discovered rediscovered her empathy, compassion, and love, but for herself. She tuned in and she connected. So I was going through a challenging period during the events on the island, but perhaps during the events in my life and the events on the island where I was a 10 or 11-year-old kid. My father and his wife, and he had been married quite a few times. They were on shore with a friend of theirs, and there were a lot of people in the cabana. And there was partying going on, and I could hear their laughter, kind of like fast gusts of wind, that would go past my ears all the way in the boat. And so I went ashore, and now here's where it gets kind of interesting. I was totally out of place, and I felt that. I was out of my depth when my father poured something in a glass and he handed it to me, and he said, "Drink." And the whole cabana became quiet and focused on me as I held the glass and I took it in one big gulp. I had taken my first swig of vodka and I felt ambushed. And I hated the way that the vodka was, hated the way that ambush was delivered. I was angry, and it made me feel more alone, made me feel more isolated. Interestingly, I did not feel the effects of the vodka. I didn't feel even the slightest bit tipsy, as if not having the knowledge of vodka, my body simply rejected it. But I left the party and I went back to the boat. I rowed back to the boat. And I made a bed in the center of the boat, which is where you get less sway at night. It was a 40-foot sailboat, and I knew my father and his wife would be in the forward cabin, and their friend would probably be outside. It was a summer night. And I fell asleep. I tucked next to the dining table, and I fell asleep. And about 4 hours later, I woke up and I felt queasy in my stomach. I went outside. I threw up over the side of the boat. I saw my friend's father out there. And I just sort of took in the scene for a moment. It was very quiet and perfect stillness on the water. And there was some moonlight. It was just a beautiful moment. If somebody would have been awake, I would have carried on a conversation. I felt totally awake and alive and ready for something. And I was feeling a little bit, okay, well, there's nothing to happen. Nothing else is going to happen. So I'll go back to sleep. So as I went back and I began to tuck myself into the covers, and just as I was putting my head down, I heard a voice call my name. And I waited for a minute and I heard the voice again. And at this point, I'm like, okay, somebody's calling my name and I'm going to respond. So I sat up at the table and I see a woman in an antique dress sitting across the table from me. And she looks at me and I perceive her to be 10 or 15 years older, 20 years older. She's considerably older than me. And she's pretty and she has long brown hair. And we beheld each other for a moment. And I was ready to carry on the conversation. I said yes. And she slowly disappeared in front of me. And I came to understand later that I had an emotional connection with her, that she and I had a past together, and she was checking in on me and checking in on me in a moment of loneliness. And well, you could argue that, well, the kid was feeling lonely. He had a swig of vodka. He manifested an illusion, that this kid really has an imagination, But in fact, there was much more to it. I felt that I tried to test the idea of seeing her and discount it and saying, well, maybe it was a dream. Maybe it was the vodka and a hallucination. Maybe I read about this somewhere. Maybe I saw a movie on this. Maybe it was some subliminal thing that happened. I was trying to assign a relationship to that made sense, and I could find none. The only thing that made sense to me was that she and I knew each other. I felt that I knew her and that she knew me, and that she knew me better than I knew her for whatever reason, because she was coming from a very different perspective. And it was the familiarity that really stuck with me, and I couldn't shake it. There was something very familiar about her, and it really woke me up to the idea that I am really not alone. Right. That there is much more going on around me than I'm aware of, than I perceive. And for whatever reason, in that moment, this manifestation, this relationship came to show me that you are not alone. And ironically, the next morning when I told my father that I saw somebody in the boat, he said, "Oh, there's a ghost in the boat." And he made a big joke out of it. Of course, I never talked about her again to anybody until I was about 15 years old and I had my first girlfriend and I shared it with her. And that relationship, we were together for 6 years. And so I told her a lot about myself and my experiences and how I perceived. So I look at this relationship to this woman in a similarly to how I see the relationship between my mother and her father.
Mm.
They had a connection. And this relationship was teaching me that we all have connections. We have connections in the physical world, and we have connections in the non-physical.
Right.
And sometimes those connections will reach out to us. It can be mysterious and inexplicable, but for whatever reason, in that moment, that's what I needed to hear and needed to see.
Yes.
And it helped me move on. In some way in my life, there wasn't any particular dramatic event happening in my life, but it helped me move on. It helped me let go of something, and it helped me move on and to other relationships, other experiences. And I am supremely confident that she and I will cross paths again. And we have. So
Nice.
it goes on, and it is eternal. And there is this, part of the conformity of our world and the distractions that can lead us to believe that we are isolated and alone. But to the contrary, we are connected.
There you go. To the contrary, we are connected.
Indeed.
That's the reason I wanted you to share that, because I just knew that's where it was going to go. just in a wonderful sense that, again, we're so technologically savvy, we're starving in the spiritual
we're
realm.
hungry. We're so hungry. We're starving. Yes,
Yeah,
that's a very good way to highlight it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's available to everyone, not just the book. It is
That's
available
right.
to you. And
That's right.
where can they find copies of the book? And
The
everyone,
book is
it's Brighter Realms, Awakening Awareness of Your Higher Self by Stephen Daniel. Stephen, tell us a little bit. How can they get the book?
The book is available on various sales platforms, Amazon, Goodreads, and a host of others. The new version of the book, as we had talked about, will hopefully be out by the beginning of February, maybe the end of February. And so there's also an electronic version, a Kindle version at Amazon. Or if somebody wants to send me an email, I'm happy to send them an advanced reader copy. I am giving away books at the moment because I'm really trying to get the word out.
Good.
And I'm happy to share. My partner and I printed 100 copies of the book, and I gave them away in 2 weeks. Physical copies, simply by going up to people at a farmer's market and asking, "Are you a reader?" I wrote a book about the origin of intuition and creativity. It's about who we are, where we come from, and where we go from here. Does that interest you? And people would either light up immediately and say, "Yes, I love that kind of reading. Here's a book." I would give them a physical book. So I'm really keen on giving the book away. And it's not really sustainable, but it's fun.
So if someone wanted to reach out to Stephen, how do they go about doing that?
brighterrealms@gmail.com.
Okay. That's easy enough. brighterrealms@gmail.com. And is there going to be a website coming?
It's brighterrealms.com.
Okay, there you go.
It's up and
Simple
running.
enough. It's
Yeah.
up and running. Okay, want to make
Yeah.
sure. Good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So, Stephen, I always ask folks, what does Stephen do to create a better life for himself?
I live in the moment. I try to experience every day as if it's the first day and for the rest of my life, and not even putting too much effort into where I may be in the future, but planning through being present. And a little bit every day, I step away from the world. I go and sit on grass. I'm a big proponent of grounding. I love to ground on the earth, sit in the sun, get a little vitamin D if you're in the ideal climate for that. I happen to be in California. I take a walk with my dogs. These are probably the most valuable parts of my day. I play with my brother's grandchildren, or the babies in the house, all of the children. On the weekends, we hang out. So I try to just live my life as fully as I can in the moment to experience this world to be here, to be fully present. And that's a big part of how I live.
There you go. Any last thoughts that you would have that you would want to instill into people's minds?
I can leave you with a poem.
Okay, great.
Okay, the soft pastels of yesterday's hues so illumines the sound of silence to mystify tomorrow's history as the pebbles wake ripples within the shadows of today.
That's beautiful. What a great way to finish it. Thanks ever so much. Stephen, this has been eye-opening, and this has been heart-opening and spirit-opening. We really appreciate your time, and enjoy your day.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, Stephen Daniel, for enriching our hearts, minds, and spirits through providing glimpses into other realms. You may connect with Stephen Daniel through his website, brighterrealms.com. brighterrealms.com. Check out the link in this episode's show notes. If you're seeking insights and advice on how to create a better life for yourself, and if you'd like to dive in self-care, self-development, or distant shamanic work, drop me a line, kevin@towardaBetterLife.com, for a free discovery call. You can also visit my website, towardaBetterLife.com, for past episodes, blog entries, ways to enhance your spiritual journey, and a few products to assist you on that journey. Be sure to check out something new, the events page, for details where you may join me at my upcoming workshop, Ancestral Healing, Becoming the Hollow Bone, coming this April to Maine. Send all your inquiries to me, kevin@towardaBetterLife.com, and there are a few seats available if you'd like to join us. Please subscribe and follow to Toward a Better Life through your favorite podcast platform, and be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. This helps to spread the word about the program and help to create, well, a better life for all of us. As always, if you have any questions or if you'd like to share a story, music, prose, if it's an audio, just send it to me as an MP3, or if you want to be my guest, please write to me, kevin@towardaBetterLife.com. That's kevin@towardaBetterLife.com. Until next week, enjoy your journey toward a better life.